Is not Somerset beautiful? Particularly at this time of the year. Do you see, up there, there are few things in nature more wonderful and more incomprehensible than the ordered flight of a flock of starlings. Many thousands of these birds will fly together in a compact mass. They will wheel about in the air and describe orderly evolutions without hesitancy and with a precision which argues complete unanimity of purpose. If attention be concentrated upon the bounding lines of this moving and living mass, it will be seen that these are not so clearly defined as, when casually observed, they appear to be. The edges, instead of being smooth and even, are rough and jagged. Further observation will show that these irregularities are due to the aberrations of flight on the part of individual birds, who are constantly separating themselves from their fellows, darting out at acute angles to the line of flight, and then swiftly returning to the flock. Now and again, however, one of these birds will be followed by all the rest, and the course of flight of the whole mass is immediately changed. Now, it is here that we must look for explanations of those varied evolutions which at first seemed so puzzling. The erratic movements of the birds on the margin are so many invitations to the flock to change the direction of its flight. Ordinarily, these are ignored. The flock prefers to remain on its course and will not be tempted to change it. When, however, one of these suggestions happens to coincide at the moment with the will of the majority, why then the invitation is accepted, the flock changes its course, and a new evolution is initiated. The same principle guides the action of every crowd of human beings in the absence of an acknowledged leader. Suggestions are constantly being made to it by its members, and when, as must happen sooner or later, one of these receives general approval, it is automatically accepted, and the whole crowd acts as one man. There you have it, two illustrations of the way in which a folk song is evolved. Of the innumerable changes made by individual singers, only those that win general approval are perpetuated. The rest, being ignored, pass into oblivion. To put it succinctly, the individual invents, the community selects. There I go, lecturing. You must forgive me. I do a lot of lecturing, not usually in lovely spots like this, mainly in halls and rooms to seated audiences, with table and glass of water to hand. I could do with a drink right now. This song collecting is very thirsty work.
Oh, there is a shrub in the father's yard, it's called the merry-go, sir. And if young men are wanting when they can, then they cannot when they will, sir. They cannot when they will, sir.
Hello, my name's Ashley Hutchings, and I'm going to tell you a little about Cecil Sharp. I don't promise you the truth, for we're talking about a man who died 60 years ago, it's before my time, and who did much of his most important work either alone or with only one other person, often a good friend and sometimes a devoted follower. Also, Sharp was a person who had, and still has, detractors and enemies. He's a classic case of a person who may be either idolised or despised, depending on either one's age, or one's class, one's political beliefs, or simply depending on who one is prepared to believe. Some facts to start with. Rather surprising, I think you'll agree. He was one of 10 children, suffered from atrocious health, had very little money, and lived the first 40 years of his life in complete unawareness of the existence of English folk song, in company with practically an entire educated nation. This collecting lark can be very wearing. Yes, I sometimes spend a whole day toiling along on my trusty bicycle to trace a singer or dancer of whom I have heard, to find him in the end perhaps only a mile away from where I had first started. I tell you, I am not likely to have many competitors at this job. No, but there are compensations. Oh yes, I have made many friends who I value, and have had more than a few adventures. One Christmas, I was noting songs by phonograph from a gypsy woman in her caravan. Suddenly, she stopped singing, turned deathly white, and announced that she heard her husband approaching. And as he was of a jealous disposition, she was afraid that he might kill me. Well, I did not want to be killed. I leapt up, flung open the caravan door, and shouted to the man, "A Merry Christmas to you! Stop a moment and listen. I have your wife's voice here in a box." The man stopped, listened to the record of his wife's song, and was so amazed and so delighted that he quite forgot to kill me. Instead, we became great friends. Oh, I went over a rather large stone back there. Do excuse me, I will just check my wheels.
How many's a long mile to go fight those black and heathens on the banks of the Nile? Oh, Willie, dearest Willie, don't leave me here to mourn. You'll make me curse and rue the day that ever I were born. For the parting of my own true love is the parting of my life. So stay at home, dear Willie, and I will be your wife. I will cut off those yellow locks, and I'll go along with you. I'll dress myself in velveteen and go and see you too. I'll fight and bear your banners whilst I'm parting on me smiles, and we'll comfort one and another on the banks of the Nile. Oh, Nancy, dearest Nancy, wishing you
They seem all right. You know, the evolution of a folk song is an interesting subject. Let us suppose that an individual, A, this spoke here, invents a story and tells it to his friend B. B, if the story takes hold of him, will narrate it to C, but in doing so will make some changes to the tale. He will very likely locate it in his own neighbourhood, change the names of the dramatis personae to those of his own friends and relatives, and in countless small ways improve upon the tale as he had it from A. Now, C, in passing it to D, will in like manner make his own improvements. D, E, F, etc. will follow the same example. The story will thus leave each individual of the series in a different form from that in which it came to him. Now, by the time it reaches Z, we may, without doing violence to probability, conceive that the story has become so changed that it no longer bears any resemblance to the form in which it originally left the mouth of A. Now, tell me, who is the author of the story which Y tells to Z? Certainly not Y, because he had it from X, nor X, because it came to him through W, nor V, U, tea, etc., for similar reasons. Nor, finally, can A be credited with its invention. Indeed, he would not claim it himself, for by our hypothesis, his original tale has been so changed during its passage from B to Z that he would scarcely even recognise it, much less claim its authorship. No, the author has disappeared. The most that can be said is that authorship belongs equally to all those individuals who have taken part in the transmission. The authorship, originally individual, has become communal. The individual has vanished, and the community has slipped into his shoes. And it is the same with a folk song. There I go, lecturing again. To more important matters. Time for lunch. This blouse is for Mrs. Lucy White, one of my best informants and a smashing lady. She lives over in Hambridge. I should like to bring presents for all my singers and dancers, but I can only pick out a few, which is rather sad. Oh, I don't rob them as I should if I bought their old tables and china, but nevertheless I feel under great obligations to them. And this is for her sister, Mrs. Louis Hooper. I have collected more than 100 songs from these two ladies. Yes. Tobacco for some of the old men, although I can think of a lot of women who would like to get their hands on this. I have lately been on the trail of the northern sword dancers, not this time on my trusty bicycle, no. Now I send to the clergy these postcards, together with a note requesting information on whether the sword dance is still annually performed in their parish, and, if not, whether it has been performed within living memory. They then answer on my postcards, you see. A. The sword dance is not performed annually here. B. I can find no traces of its being done here, Laxton Vicarage. The answer to your questions A and B is in the negative, Garton Vicarage. A, no. B, no, I think not, Everston. We have no sword dance here, nor any other old customs. Loftus. Dear sir, a dance with poker and tongs crossed is the only thing ever performed in this village approaching a sword dance I have heard of. Withenwick. A, no. B, no. Kirkella Vicarage. Dear sir, I can't read this. Some of these vicars, to judge from their handwriting, have followed the wrong calling. They should have been doctors. A, no. B, no. Napton. No, Lastingham. Sword dance at Stillingfleet, York. You ask if it is still performed. I have been here more than 25 years, and never heard it mentioned. When used it to be? See letter from Rector of Bainton near Driffield, in today's Yorkshire Post. Though it may, I wish to say we have no oldest inhabitant of any account, or I would ask him. Positively chatty. Nothing there. catalogue of Sharp's illnesses. Asthma. This was a development of hay fever, and he suffered badly from it for the rest of his life. Gout, which affected his eyes. It sometimes caused blindness and was so painful that he had been known to roll around the floor in agony. Neuritis in his right elbow. This meant that for a time he had to give up playing the piano. It also led to Maud Carpelli's giving her services as a scribe and amanuensis. Fever. This dated from his time in the Appalachian Mountains of America, where he nearly died from it. Delirium. These attacks left him extremely weak and exhausted for several weeks afterwards. Bronchitis and lumbago. To cope with all this and continue his active and painstaking work, Sharp must have needed superhuman funds of stoicism and patience. In fact, with many things in Sharp's life, patience had to be the name of the game. Aha! Lunch. What have I today? Cheese, with a rather limp piece of lettuce clinging to it for comfort. The sun is devilish hot today. Oh, please excuse me. I am a vegetarian. For my health. There are not many of us around. There's me. And George Bernard Shaw is the other one. Shaw, of course, is a socialist. I am often asked about my political beliefs. I say I am a conservative socialist. That shuts them up. Another thing people want to know is how I go about collecting these folk songs. I expect you would like to know too. Well, I shall tell you. When I visit a new village, I don't ask if there are any singers of note. Oh, no. No, I ask where the oldest people live, and I visit them. If I were to call on the acknowledged singers, the younger people with strong voices, all I would get would be music hall songs and the like. No, it is the old people who have the folk songs. I ask them if they know any old-fashioned songs. They are sometimes wary of me, dressed the way I am. They often say no. So, I recite to them some words of a well-known folk song. But wrongly. This proves too much for them. They are only too pleased to set me right. I think it is very easy to be too touchy about the vulgarization of things like folk songs which one loves. A lover of Beethoven's music must feel the same. If ever he thought of the way his favourite composer's music is being rendered in Crouch End or Hornsey. If anything good is to be made popular, many things will happen which will shock the sensitive feelings of the elect. This is inevitable and must be accepted. I accept it in this case because I believe so sincerely in the innate beauty and purity of folk music that I am sure that it cannot really be contaminated, but that it must and will always do good wherever it finds a resting place. Beauty is not the aim of art, but the proof of it. All forms of artistic utterance are natural and inborn, and every human being is a potential artist. The hope for the future of art is that the leisured class may become the whole community, and not one small part of it. Some people ask me why it is that I go everywhere on my bicycle. Well, in the first instance, I cannot afford to keep a motor car, and in the second instance, if I were to travel by motor car, I might miss something on the roadside, a gypsy encampment, a farm labourer returning home from work, or the chance encounter with a stonebreaker. Now, there's a hazardous occupation. I don't mean stone breaking, I mean noting tunes from a stonebreaker. You see, very often the occupation and the song are inseparable. One woman in Langport could only sing a song when she was ironing. And another woman in the same court sang best on washing day. And I once collected 2 excellent songs from a bird starver. It was his job to protect a patch of mangold seeds from being eaten by birds, and this he did by hammering a tea tray. You see, he was quite willing to sing, but his conscience would not allow him to neglect his duty. So we arranged that he should hammer his tea tray in between the verses of his songs, and thus combine business with pleasure. And this we achieved to our mutual satisfaction, and to the amusement of passers-by. A drink, I think, next. The question that people often ask me, apart from why did you leave Steli, and what make of bass strings do you use, is what made you decide to do a piece on Cecil Sharp? Well, firstly, I felt I knew a bit about folk music and dance, and secondly, I shamelessly saw parallels with Sharp's work and mine. Although he is, of course, a much greater figure than I am, it could be said that we were both in the business of popularising folk music. And in the same way that I caught a lot of flack early on for rocking up the music, Sharp cops it for editing songs and arranging them for piano and putting them in school books and so forth. I think that it's very easy for us to pontificate over this business of tidying up folk songs. We live in a pretty free and easy age, and in England at least, it's possible to do and say pretty well anything. I don't think we can apply our principles to Sharp and his contemporaries. I do think that Sharp believed that his society required him to mould the material to suit its own tastes. And when you come to think of it, that isn't very different from electric folk. But we mustn't turn this into a lecture, as Sharp would say. Instead, let's have some more music.
I am a sailor stout and poor. A long time I sailed the ocean to find for king and a country true, for honour and promotion. I'll go through England, I'll bid you all adieu. No more to talk or to go along with you, but I'll ramble the country through and through, and I will be the rambling sailor. Oh, when first I come to Reading town, oh, there was lasses plenty. I've only stepped up to one of them to court her for her beauty. I says, my dear, what do you choose? There's ale and wine and there's brandy too, and besides a pair of new stuffed shoes to travel with the rambling sailor.
I shall go to watch it tomorrow. to visit my old sailor friend John Short. Now, he likes to be near the sea when he sings his shanties. So we sit side by side on the quay. John sings happily to the accompaniment of wind and waves, while I jot down the tunes and smoke my pipe. Yes, it will be very nice to see and hear the sea again.
When's he going to wake up? Perhaps he's waiting for the birds. Better send him the tape then, haven't we? That'll wake him up. Can you answer that, Dave?
Hello, Dambuster. Hello, Dambuster.
And then, when John Short has finished singing, he will take out his pipe and we will smoke together. He has a rich, resonant and powerful voice, yet so flexible that he can execute trills, turns and graces with a delicacy and finish that would incite the envy of many a professional artist. You know, it must be beyond the comprehension of most people that an incurable asthmatic such as I should derive so much pleasure from smoking a pipe. It is certainly beyond my comprehension. My wife and children are continually bullying me to give it up. Quite right. You would be surprised at how many women smoke pipes, particularly in the Appalachians. I remember one lady who Maud and I befriended. We spent many long hours with her, and a friend who lived with her, delighting in her racy talk and enjoying the songs that the two women gave us. They both smoked pipes, although when we visited them, they had only one pipe between them. She told us she had married 3 times. The first husband had killed a man and was serving a long sentence in the penitentiary. The second one drank, so she kicked him out. And the third wouldn't work, and so had to depart in the same summary fashion. She used to say, "I just got one face, and I worn it out. That's why it's so ugly." When I asked her what she would like as a present from New York, she said, "A pipe made of the foam of the sea." Pardon me, please. Do you mind if I loosen my tie and collar? I collected an interesting new Morris handkerchief movement last week from old William Walton of Atterbury. The 2 diagonal corners are tied together, thus. Of course, Miss Janet Blunt must take credit for noting much of the Atterbury tradition and for introducing me to Mr. Walton. But our notation does not always agree. But then I always think that 2 people with the names Sharp and Blunt cannot be expected, don't you? Now, how did it go? There was another lady whom Sharp failed to agree with on the subject of Morris, but this time not on the finer points of notation, but on a much more fundamentally important matter. Mary Neal and her Esperance Club approached the Morris from a philanthropic point of view. So long as young people were getting enjoyment from it, the standard of performance was not particularly important. Sharp believed, however, that high artistic standards must be aimed for. They clashed, of course, massively and publicly, and matters weren't helped by the fact that Sharp and his followers unswervingly believed that a straight leg and a spring from the ankle was the only way to dance. Mary Neal advocated an energetic, high-stepping style with raised thighs. In fact, it was said that straight and bent legs were bandied about like party cries. But then controversy has dogged the Morris throughout its history, and continues to do so. Doesn't it, ladies? Fiddlers are a strange breed. They seem quite incapable of playing a tune if they have forgotten the form and figures of the dance to which it belongs. On one occasion, a musician from whom I just noted a Morris tune innocently remarked, "Now, sir, now you know all about the dance." On cross-examination, I discovered that he really believed that tune carried with it automatically the knowledge of the form and figures of the dance to which it belongs. I once presented a bow to Charlie Benfield of Bledington, an old fiddler whose own bow had been broken some years previously, since when he had been unable to play his fiddle. The old man tuned up, played over a few tunes, and the result did not please him. Thoughtfully, he fingered and examined the bow and said, "All right, it seems a nice bow, but somehow it won't keep time with the other hand." Strange breed. There are some fine fiddlers in the Appalachians, and sometimes they are attended by a beater. Yeah, he sits at right angles to the instrumentalist and beats the strings of the fiddle between the bridge and the fingers of the player with two pencil-like springy... As these sticks strike all the strings simultaneously, a rhythmical drone effect is produced, which is a great aid to the dancers. I can recall a wonderful evening at Pine Mountain in Kentucky, 1917, when I witnessed a fiddler and beater playing in such a manner for the running set. Now, the running set is a country dance, executed with a swift, gliding movement which makes the dancers seem as though they are under hypnotic influence. In its general effect, in the continuity and continuousness of its circular movements, in the short, quick step of the dancers, and above all, in its tense, restrained, and emotional quality, it resembles the sword dance rather than the country dance. When I witnessed it at Pine Mountain, I was irresistibly reminded of the effect that the Handsworth sword dance had upon me the first time I saw it. So at Pine Mountain, everyone was dancing, really dancing, all the time. Even when a performer was not actively engaged in the execution of a figure, he was patting or dancing on his own account. He never stood still for a moment. The outstanding feature of the running set is the swift, lightning movement and speed with which the figures are negotiated. Apparently, the dancers are set upon doing these figures in the shortest time possible, executed. I shall never forget the scene on the porch at Pine Mountain. It was after dark, and we had but one dim lantern with us. But the moon streamed fitfully in, and illuminated the dancers and the crowd of onlookers who encircled them. And when the excitement rose to fever heat, the scene presented a strange, weird picture, the visual effect heightened by the clappings and stampings of the patters, the tramp of the room seemed full of rhythm, and penetrating through it all, the even, falsetto tones of the caller, coolly and unexcitedly reciting his directions. Will you excuse me for a moment? I feel the need to pay a visit to the nearest hedge. The operation passed without incident. Well, almost without incident. I had selected a suitable place in the hedge, and was in the throes of, well, when I was by a loud rustling noise from beneath. Thank heavens, thought I, that this is not the season for morris dancers. Well, you see, when they are touring the villages, they often sleep under the hedges. It was a partridge. It bustled off down the road. Now, where were we? The Appalachians. In the Appalachians, good roads were scarce or non-existent. They were, for the most part, rough tracks over the mountain passes, or along the creeks, or occasionally the creek bed itself would serve as a roadway for a few miles. The mountain people rode mules, or, if a load had to be carried, harnessed them to a conveyance that was aptly named a jolt wagon. This was a cart without springs, which could be heard lumbering over the boulders a mile away. Wherever possible, the faithful Maud and I walked, although this was often a tiring business when it 15 or 16 miles in great heat over a track so rough that it was necessary to pick out every footstep. Not surprisingly, the people had very little knowledge of the outside world. Oh, they had all heard of the war, but were not always certain whether England was fighting with or against Germany. Whilst staying in the Ty River Valley in Virginia, we first heard the rumour that we were German spies. Yes, something which we had to contend with in other places. We were told that after an evening prayer meeting, the whole congregation stayed and discussed us, and it was generally agreed that we were highly suspicious characters, and that noting tunes was merely a blind with which to hide our nefarious actions, which included the poisoning of springs, amongst other things. The Appalachians are a paradise. The flowers and flowering trees are just wonderful. The dogwood has a pure, white, Christmas rose kind of flower which covers the whole tree before its leaves come out, like the blackthorn. Then there is the magnolia, which they call the wild cucumber, because of the scarlet cucumber-shaped seed that it bears in autumn. I don't think I have ever seen such lovely trees, ferns and wildflowers. If I had not my own special axe to grind, I should have collected ferns or butterflies or something. It was in this paradise that I received news that 3 of my friends had been killed at the Battle of the Somme. Percy Lucas was the first man who really understood what the folk dance revival meant. Reginald Tiddy's essays on the mummers' plays are quite wonderful. By far the best contribution that has yet been made to the subject. And George Butterworth. The music he composed was true, delicate, and poignantly beautiful. His use of folk music was no conscious pose. He had absorbed the language so deeply that it had become his natural mode of expression. My 3 wonderful dancers. I felt, when the dreadful news came, that I didn't want to carry on any more. And I still have the same feeling.
Oh, fare thee well, my dearest love. I fare thee well a while. If I roam away, I'll come back again. If I roam 10,000 miles, my dear, if I roam 10,000 miles, 10,000 miles, it is a long way, for to leave me here alone, to leave me here to sigh and complain, where you never will hear my moans, my dear, where you never will hear my moans. Your moans, my dear, I never shall hear, nor likewise none of you crying. If I roam away, I'll come back again, when of your friends you're free, my dear, when of your friends you're free. Those of my friends, they never should have been, they were growing so lofty and high. I never will prove false to the pretty girl I love, till the stars fall from the sky, my dear, till the stars fall from the sky. Oh, the stars will never fall from the sky, nor the rocks never melt with the sun. I never will prove false to the pretty girl I love, till all those things be done, my dear, till all those things be done. Oh, yonder do set yon little turtle dove, he sit on yonder high tree, a-making a mourn for the loss of his love, as I will do for thee, my dear, as I will do for thee.
A few weeks ago, I was hunting for songs on Exmoor, and had spent 2 or 3 hours one afternoon listening to and noting down several exquisite melodies that were sung to me by an old man, aged 86. In the evening of the same day, my peace was rudely disturbed by the raucous notes of coarse music hall songs shouted out at the tops of their voices by the young men of the village who were spending the evening in the bar of my hotel. The contrast between the old-fashioned songs and kindly manners of my friend, the old parish clerk, who lived hard by, and the songs and uncouth behaviour of the occupants of the bar struck me forcibly and threw into strong relief the deplorable deterioration that in the last 30 years or so has taken place in the manners and amusements of the country villagers. Am I lecturing again? Or are these just the rantings of a sick and irritable old man, displaying all the signs of galloping senility? At any rate, none of this will serve to add to the collection of folk songs, and I am expected in Hanbridge. Cecil Sharp died in 1924. Unlike many other remarkable and unique figures down the centuries, he couldn't complain of posthumous acknowledgement, because by the time of his death, most people were aware that much of our folk music and dance had been rescued from imminent oblivion by his dedicated work, and thousands of people of all ages were now singing and dancing. However, he may have good cause to complain of the manner in which in recent years his work has been denigrated. But, being Cecil Sharp, perhaps he would simply dismiss this with a joke. I don't know. Remember, I didn't promise you the truth. Cheerio.